Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at a brand new Pokemon in the world of Pokemon Go, Kleavor. Now, Kleavor is being released through Tier 3 raids, and the good news is, it is soloable. Kleavor is a Bug and Rock-type Pokemon with a moveset of Quick Attack, X-Scissor, and Stone Edge, and it is a pretty attack-weighted Pokemon, meaning it's not going to be able to take a lot of hits, but it did get a pretty okay moveset, so it should be able to deal some nice damage in return. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and test if Kleavor is worth the investment for the Ultra League. Hopping to the first match, leading Pidgeot into Walrein, absolutely terrible lead. I'm going to save switch into Cobalion, and my opponent is going to respond with a Charizard. Now my opponent was a little slow on the swap there, and with an energy lead and proper baits, Cobalion can actually flip this. I'm able to grab a shield with a Sacred Sword. My opponent does have quite a bit of energy here. I decided to shield at the last second, and it is the Blast Burn. That's a big shield, and now I'm going to be firing off another bait. Can we go 2 for 2 on baits? Yes, we can. And now Cobalion is going to be able to flip switch here. This is quite nice, as this means I'm not going to have to worry about Walrein aligned onto my Pidgeot. I do make it to the Stone Edge. This is double super effective damage, and down goes Charizard. Opponent can send back in the Walrein, but Walrein is not going to appreciate the Sacred Sword. In comes Walrein. Opponent looks for a catch onto Kanto Muck, and honestly, I'm perfectly fine with staying in here, as they have basically no fast move pressure into Cobalion, and they're forced to go for Thunder Punch due to the fact that I do resist Dark Pulse. So I'm more than happy to stay in here with Cobalion, wait for them to throw their energy, and then I can go for a Quick Attack farm down with Kleavor. They're finally starting to fire off charge moves, and that works for me. They go for Thunder Punch number 1 and Thunder Punch number 2. All I need for them is to throw their energy, which they do, and now it is Kleavor time. In comes Kleavor. We get the farm down. Back in comes the Walrein. Walrein farming up, but losing CMP to Kleavor. We make it to the Stone Edge. Stone Edge one-shots the Walrein, and that is a good game. Picking up a decent lead in the next match, Pidgeot into Shadow Swampert. Considering my back 2 Pokemon take super effective damage from Swampert, I'm definitely happy to catch it on the lead. They're of course going to be able to outpace. I will commit an early shield because I plan to go for the Feather Dance. This of course will lower their attack by 2 stages, so future moves will do less. Opponent calls the bait, they save switch into Obstagoon, and Obstagoon will immediately be countered by Cobalion. Cobalion will be able to absorb the cross chop damage quite well. Cobalion over farming to the max, and now going for the Sacred Sword. This will KO the Obstagoon. Opponent did leave with some energy on the Swampert, but I don't think they're quite at a move. In comes the Swampert, and I'm able to fire off the Sacred Sword. This will not be lethal, but Shadow Swampert not the tankiest, so it will commit a shield, and great counting by my opponent as they're going to fire off the Hydro Cannon on the CMP tie. I'm just going to let this go. At this point, Cobalion has done its job, and now I can send back in Pidgeot. Pidgeot going for the Feather Dance, but losing CMP to the opponent. That is quite unfortunate. Hydro Cannon is going to connect. I'm firing off the Feather Dance. This is not going to be enough to KO. Feather Dance will not be lethal. In the back is Greedent, and I send in Kleavor. Now this is a bit of a tough matchup for Kleavor, just due to the fact that Greedent is extremely bulky, and Kleavor is not. As you can see, the quick attacks do apply some okay fast move pressure, and I'm firing off the Stone Edge. Stone Edge does connect, even in neutral situations, hitting quite hard. My opponent is going to go for Crunch number 2. Kleavor barely able to hang on and make it to the X-Scissor. At this point, no one knows Kleavor counts, so my opponent, fearing a second Stone Edge, is going to commit the shield. And now I'm in a bit of an awkward spot. My opponent has very minimal fast move pressure, so I'm actually going to no-shield the Body Slam, attempt to wing attack all the way down, and leave with a move that I can throw into the Swampert. This is going to be very close. I have such little HP remaining. Going for the farm down. Opponent snipes with a Mud Shot, and that's game over. Picking up a decent lead in the next match, Pidgeot into Tapu Fini. My backline is not a big fan of Tapu, so I definitely don't mind catching it on the lead. My opponents have been no-shielding my Feather Dances, so here I just go straight for the Brave Bird, able to land it, and now I can send in Cobalion. My opponent has farmed up quite a bit of energy here. They go for the Surf. I can tank that perfectly fine, and now my opponent is going to send in their own Cobalion. I'm going to fire off the Sacred Sword as I want to try and get some damage onto Cobalion. Farming up, my opponent goes for a Sacred Sword themselves. I decide to let this through. It is barely not enough to KO. My Cobalion able to hang on, make it to the Sacred Sword, and grab a shield from my opponent. I'm now going to send in Pidgeot, but the unfortunate thing is that Pidgeot is not going to appreciate a Stone Edge. So I decide to commit the shield just to get baited with a Sacred Sword. That is quite unfortunate. Here, I'm going to go for the Feather Dance. I'm hoping that this is going to be enough to KO. It's going to be close. Feather Dance! Barely is not, but I think the opponent overtapped and does not get the move. In the back is Aurorus. I send in Kleavor. Kleavor met with Tapu Fini. Surf is going to deal a ton of damage, so I will commit the shield and go for the quick attack farm down. Kleavor gets the farm down, leaving with a lot of energy. I don't know if my opponent knows Kleavor's moveset, but I'm going for a bait. Going for the X-Scissor. Opponent calls the bait, and now my only win con is them disrespecting the Stone Edge. I go for the Stone Edge. It KOs Aurorus, and we somehow get the win. We see mirror leads in the next match, Pidgeot versus Pidgeot. I do finally have my Pidgeot best buddied, so CMP is going to come down to a coin flip, which unfortunately I lose. I'm going to let the first move through. They almost always Feather Dance in the Pidgeot mirror, so I'm able to tank that no problem, and then return fire with a Feather Dance of my own. My opponent is going to no shield as well. We are now both 2 stages debuffed. I'm farming up to the Brave Bird, but they do not even bait it. They just go straight for a Feather Dance, so I'm just going to bank this energy and now send in Cobalion. My opponent is now going to send in Virizion, and that's not what I was hoping to see here. I mean, to be fair, Kleavor would not do well against Virizion, but it's a very unfortunate matchup for Cobalion. I'm going to be firing off Sacred Sword number 2. This is going to connect, getting that Virizion lower. Virizion can go for the Sacred Sword. It's not going to be enough to KO here, so I will be able to withstand the damage, farm up, and win CMP over the Virizion. That is absolutely massive. Sacred Sword is going to KO, and I win switch. In comes Pidgeot. Pidgeot gets the farm down as I just can't make it to the Sacred Sword. That's unfortunate. I'm going straight for the Brave Bird here with my Pidgeot, as this will be lethal. Brave Bird gets the KO. It's Cobalion in the back, and I resign the match. Picking up a great lead in the next match, Pidgeot into Venusaur. Opponent is going to save switch into what I thought was a Mandibuzz, but it's a Galarian Moltres. Now, why that's a problem is Galarian Moltres actually gets Ancient Power, which hits Kleavor for super effective damage. So I'm able to bait with an X-Scissor and grab a shield from the Moltres, but as expected, they are running Ancient Power. Honestly, had I paid attention and seen it was a Galarian Moltres, I should have brought in Cobalion, as Ancient Power is nearly able to KO, and to add insult to injury, the Moltres gets a boost. I fire off a Stone Edge, that's going to grab the second shield, so my opponent has now successfully won switch, but I do have a shield advantage. In comes Cobalion. I should be able to tank whatever they throw here. They go for a resisted payback, and with a boost, that is a massive amount of damage. I'm firing off the Stone Edge just to get rid of this thing, and I'll have to see what their third Pokemon is. In comes Venusaur. I bank a Stone Edge for later. In comes Pidgeot. They're throwing energy, so that means hopefully they don't have a good response to a Pidgeot in the back. They go for the Sludge Bomb. In the back, it's a Charizard, and this is a winnable game. I'm just going straight for the Brave Bird. Shields are down. Brave Bird connects. Can I get the farm down? Yes, I can. They cannot double up on charge moves, and that means this game is over. Pidgeot gets the farm down, and the opponent concedes the match. We see a familiar lead in the next match, Pidgeot into Walrein. Very tough lead. I'm going to save switch into Cobalion, and my opponent responds with Cresselia. And this is unfortunately a very good matchup for my opponent, as I can fire off Stone Edge after Stone Edge after Stone Edge in this matchup. But unfortunately, Cresselia is just so tanky that it's able to withstand that damage. Meanwhile, 2 Moonblasts are just about going to be enough to KO. I am now below half health, continuing to farm up, going for Stone Edge number 2 here. This Stone Edge is confidently going to be no-shielded by the Cresselia. Cresselia firing off another charge move. I'm going to let this through. It is the Moonblast. Moonblast is going to get me low. I'm farming up. Opponent is going to fire off another move. And at this point, I'm just going to let the Cobalion go. Even if I fired off that next Stone Edge, it would have not been lethal. So I'm just going to send in Pidgeot and instead go for the Feather Dance on the CMP tie. This way, I can, after this, fully commit to the farm down, and I'm going to reduce the amount of damage that Cress is able to hit me with on the way. They go for the Moonblast. That does not deal a lot of damage, courtesy of the Feather Dance debuff. And now, going for the full farm down, but Cress refusing to get KO'd, able to make it to one final move. I'm Brave Birding the Walrein when they send it in, and then I'm looking to switch into Kleavor. Let's see what they have in the back. Brave Bird connects, in comes Kleavor. In the back, they have Trevenant, and unfortunately, this is a terrible matchup for Kleavor. As you're going to see, with Quick Attack being double resisted, I have no fast move pressure. X-Scissor does not hit hard enough, so I resign the match. The tough leads continue in the next match, Pidgeot into Shadow Ampharos. I save switch into Cobalion, and my opponent is going to respond with Virizion. At the very least, I did need to bait out the Virizion, as Kleavor would not do well against it. So I'm just going to look to farm up with my Cobalion. Opponent does win CMP over mine, which is a bit unfortunate. Sacred Sword is going to get me low, but I should live 2 more double kicks. So if they try and go for the farm down, I can force a shield. And that's exactly what they do. Opponent could have just thrown on CMP there, but instead trying to go for the farm down, and that's going to cost them a shield. And honestly, shield advantage is quite nice when running a very glassy Pokemon like Kleavor. I'm going to let this through. Opponent just goes for the Sacred Sword, not able to make another move, and I'm looking to send in Kleavor. In comes the Ampharos. Ampharos does have quite a bit of energy, and those Shadow Volt switches are chunking. I commit the shield on the Thunder Punch. In the back is Walrein. I'm going to fire off the Stone Edge on the CMP tie. I need this to one-shot. Stone Edge barely does not. Walrein with 1 HP remaining, able to hang on, and I will commit the shield on the Icicle Spear. I know that they're 1 Volt Switch away, so I throw 2 quick attacks, and I fire off the X-Scissor on the CMP tie to their Thunder Punch. They commit the shield. Again, day 1 battles with a new Pokemon, so people aren't familiar with Kleavor counts. And now I just have to hope that a Brave Bird from Pidgeot will be lethal. I farm up as much as I can, going for the Brave Bird. Can it KO? Yes, it can. And that is a good game. We see a neutral lead in the next match, Pidgeot into Talonflame. I'm going to stay in this matchup to start, and I'm just going to full send the Brave Bird. As I mentioned earlier, people just weren't really shielding the first move that I threw, so I may as well full send it. Brave Bird connects, safe switch into the Kleavor, looking for the farm down. Opponent sends in a Shadow Walrein. I'm going for the Stone Edge on the CMP tie here. Do they respect the damage? They do. That is absolutely heartbreaking. I'm going to commit the shield because Kleavor, unfortunately, if I no shield an Icicle Spear, is just going to get farmed down. So I'm going to farm up with Kleavor. Unfortunately, not able to make it to the Stone Edge as Walrein does pace very quickly. I'm going to, again, look to overfarm with Kleavor, bait with the X-Scissor, hoping that with this bait, I can make it to the Stone Edge. It looks like I can, but I fall just short of the Stone Edge. I'm forced to settle for the X-Scissor on the CMP tie, and X-Scissor just does not do a lot of damage there. So Walrein is going to be able to KO with the Icicle Spear, and now I'm going to send in Cobalion. Cobalion, unfortunately, not going to be able to fully farm down without taking an Earthquake, so I will throw off a Sacred Sword. We'll have to see what they have in the back. It is Trevenant, and that is not good. I'm firing off the Stone Edge just to get some chip damage onto the Trevenant, but the bad news for me is that Talonflame has a Brave Bird loaded, and this is just about going to KO. Talonflame, Brave Bird is basically going to KO the Pidgeot. Little bit of lag, but Pidgeot is just too low. Trevenant farms down Pidgeot. And unfortunately, Cobalion just does not have enough energy to win this game. Shadow Ball connects. Cobalion farming up, trying to make it to the Stone Edge. But that's not going to happen as Trevenant gets the KO with the Shadow Ball. Hopping to the final match, taking Pidgeot into Defense Deoxys. Now this is a pretty big core breaker for the entire team, so I'm forced to stay in with Pidgeot. I can fire off the Feather Dance on the CMP tie to the Rock Slide, but interestingly enough, they actually overfarm. So Feather Dance is going to connect. Now they are 2 stages debuffed, and my opponent is not switching out. This is quite nice for me. I'm going to tank this as it is going to be debuffed. They're actually running Thunderbolt, and now I'm going to full send the Brave Bird. I'm going to Brave Bird and then save switch into Cobalion, and it's a simultaneous switch, Cobalion into Drapion, but for some reason the Drapion is invisible. You have got to be kidding me. Drapion, well, I guess we'll see what charge moves this invisible Drapion has. Apparently, they're running Aqua Tail. Fantastic. Alright, farming up with Cobalion. Also, the charge moves are inverted colors. This is just a really fun bug. At this point, I just take a screenshot to be like, well, I'm facing an invisible Drapion. What do I do here? So, I go for the Sacred Sword. They make it to 1 final Aqua Tail, and I'm just going to let this go. and leave with some energy on Cobalion. Opponent is going to send in their Deoxys, and I'm firing off my Sacred Sword. Sacred Sword is going to get the shield. Deoxys firing off a move, and I'm just going to save shields for Kleavor. Hopefully their final Pokemon is going to be visible. One can only hope. Kleavor gets the farm down. What do they have in the back? It's a Mandibuzz, and man, I would love to see how much damage this Stone Edge does to a Mandibuzz. Stone Edge from Kleavor, massive damage onto the XL Mandibuzz. Mandibuzz is now going to be hit with the X Scissor Bait. They have to shield if they want to stay in this game. They just let it through, and Kleavor farms down. And now some final thoughts on Kleavor. First off, I do think the moveset is pretty solid. Quick Attack has some decent fast move pressure, and on top of that, having Stone Edge as a nuke is quite nice for an attack-weighted Pokemon. I will say I don't think the Pokemon is very well suited to the open Ultra League meta, as there's a lot of common meta threats, Trevenant, Cobalion, Giratina, that it just doesn't really have any play against. So I would say it could be potentially worth the investment down the road for an Ultra League limited meta, but for the open Ultra League, not so much. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is absolutely incredible. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.